relationship between norm and reality involves the suspension of the norm. In the same way as in ontology, the relationship between language and reality and world involves the suspension of the denotative discourse in the form of a line. But what remains essential, the point for the juridical order, is that this zone, where in reality we find only a human action with no relation to the law, pure violence, coincides with an extreme and almost spectral figure of law, which now divides itself in a pure validity without being enforced, it's the Kantian form of law, and in a pure being enforced without validity, enforcing law, the state of exception. Try now to examine a very provisional conclusion. If we follow this, and it's important, it's precisely to try to really grasp this peculiar structure which links together law and meaning. So according to this perspective, the Western juridical system shows itself to be a kind of double structure, formed by two heterogeneous but related elements, normative, can we say normative in English? Normative, strictly juridical element, and an anomic, so not juridical, not strictly juridical element. The normative element, as we saw, seems to need the anomic element in order to be able to apply, to refer to reality, so that it has to maintain itself, so at any price in relationship with the anomic. And the state of exception, I would say, is the device, the dispositif, which must precisely ensure this articulation between these two elements, so that the juridical political machine can continue to work. This machine, this device, is founded on, as we saw, on the fiction that the juridical order, the form of force of law, is still in relationship with the law. That is to say that the power to suspend the law is still in immediately contiguity to life, with life. As far as these two elements, paradoxically linked together, remain in some way related, but are conceptually, temporally, and subjectively distinguishable, like it was, to make a comparison, in the Roman Republic through the of our time. You know that in the 16th century we had many treatises on the Arcana Imperii, on the secrets of power. Arcanum comes from arca, arch, see, the arch, and like the arch in which the Torah, the law, is hidden. So I tried to show that what the arch of law, of power, contains in its center is the state of exception. But this is a void space where a human action with no relation to the law faces a law with no relation to life. Of course, this does not mean that the machine with this empty center is not working. On the contrary, I tried precisely to show that the machine didn't cease to work. From Hitler to Bush, through fascism and Nazi till our time, the machine continued to work. And perhaps the state of exception has only now reached its full planetary development. The problem here is not simply to go back or give back to the state of exception its limits, must be temporary, so in order to reaffirm the primacy of the law with respect to a state of exception. And it's not the point. I don't think that this is anymore possible. From the real state of exception in which we live, there is no return to the état de droit, as we call it in Europe. A state wholly defined by the rule of law. There is no return to this. What has become problematic is precisely these two notions, state and law. This becomes the problem. But if I think that it is possible to try to stop the machine of the state of exception, and, as I have attempted in my book, to exhibit at least its central fiction, this is precisely because there is no substantial articulation between law and life, between violence and law. I try to show that this articulation is a fiction, is the empty space of the state of exception. In the tension field of our culture, we could say that two opposed forces are working. The first one, which posits and ties, and the second one, which makes inoperative and unties and suspends. The state of exception is the extreme point in this tension field. And also, perhaps what in attempting to coincide with the rule threatens to make these two forces indistinguishable. To live in a state of exception means then to experience both possibilities, and separating and dividing each time these two elements. So to live in a state of exception means to attempt to break, to interrupt and arrest the functioning of the machine that is leading the planet to a state of perfect world's order. So to exhibit in some way the law in its known relation to life, and to exhibit life in its known relation to the law, means to open up between them a space for a human action, which we used once, a long time ago, to name politics. Politics perhaps has undergone a lasting eclipse, can you say eclipse? Because it has contaminated itself with law. Thus, it has conceived itself either as pouvoir constituant, constituent power, and this was the better, not the worst, so that is to say, as we saw, as law-positing violence. Or, even worse, it has reduced itself to an endless negotiation with law. On the contrary, truly political is only that action which is able to cut the relationship between violence